Isn't this fancy? Brett, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Hey, Brett. Hey, everyone. This is Felicia from California, and Mary is also online with our special guest speaker today, Brett Johnson, who's all the way in the East Coast. So those of you who are still in the East Coast, the online team meeting. I have the privilege of introducing to you one of my most favorite people on this earth, Mr. Brett Johnson. I had the privilege of meeting him over, how many years ago? 5, 6?
Quite a
long time ago. Through a series of serendipitous events, but we know there's no coincidences when people meet people. And I'm so privileged to have met and got to know Brett and his lovely wife, Lynn Johnson, who are originally from South Africa. And they were called here to San Francisco for a period of time. Was it 20 years?
30.
30 years, oh my God. And then now back in South Africa and visiting family on the East Coast. So we're really very privileged to have him here with us. Brett has many, many years of experience in the as a CA, as a pastor, church planter, and as a, I guess lately you would call business mentor to so many people all around the world, including Nigeria. So we are so privileged to have Brett Johnson with us because he is one of the leading thinkers of the Institute that helps people to repurpose businesses in them and help them find purpose in the marketplace. So take it away, Brett. We are so excited and so honored that you allowed us to take the Lemon assessment. And we just can't wait to learn from you tonight.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks so much, Felicia. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start the PowerPoint presentation. So the video will disappear and you should be seeing a screen popping up in a moment. And the topic, of course, tonight is Lemon Leadership. Thanks to those of you who took the assessment, and thanks, Felicia and Mary, for having me. We are going to cover just a taste of Lemon Leadership, including some of your own assessments. And so I'm going to jump right into it. As Felicia said, sadly, I've been in business for about 40 years. Started in South Africa and then moved across to the States about 30 years ago. And in terms of my Lemon profile, there's no surprise I'm a luminary, but I have some other bits and pieces in there as well, which we'll talk about later on. So as we've worked with leaders around the world, historically, there's been a notion that there's two types of leaders, entrepreneurs and managers. And the problem with that is that it's actually just 3 slices short of what people really are. So you figured out by now that Lemon is an acrostic for luminaries, entrepreneurs, managers, organizers, and networkers. And we're going to unpack some of what that means. Now, a couple of things before we get going. First, just to recognize that it's not about styles. So people are direct, indirect, they're introvert, extrovert, and so on. So this is not about your style. It's not about whether you're concrete or abstract. It's about how you wired your leadership DNA. It's also not about your strengths or about your weaknesses or what you do under pressure. It's about your wiring, how you're made. And everybody has some combination of these 5 slices of the lemon. And the key point is
Hey, Brett, can I interrupt you for a second here? For some reason, Google blacked out your screen. So we're not seeing.
So you're not seeing anything?
No, we did for a split second at the beginning, and then Google, oh, now we see you.
Okay, so I'm going to stop. I've stopped sharing the screen, and I'm going to start again on that. And see if it
there, we can see that
now. Okay.
Yes.
So I'm going to just keep going. I won't start from the beginning just because of time. So what I'm going to do is chat about these 5 types briefly. Firstly, luminaries. And luminaries believe that everything begins with an idea. They like to make up their own game, if you like, and they tend to be long-range thinkers. And so they care about why, not so much about how, but why. And so this is pretty important as you're dealing with direct sales. If you have customers who are luminaries or you have people that you're working with, I'll unpack this in a moment. So on your particular team, and I'm not sure if it's Kath or it's Kathy, but she's a luminary, and that's by far and away her highest thing. And then secondly, the entrepreneur and manager. And so this is somebody who thinks in terms of ideas and so on. And for them, what they do actually is they think, they dialogue, they question, they wonder about things. You'll often hear them saying that they are pondering this or pondering that. And so they tend to think in long-term time frames and approach things through their heads. Another luminary is Kimberly Varner in your group. And what's interesting about Kimberly is that she's a luminary networker. And what this means is both of these things tend to be a bit vague. And so the luminary networker, you have to know if you're a luminary, what are you luminary about? And she would be luminary about how to gather people, is what it would typically be. And so we'll unpack what that means on a good day and a bad day in a moment. Casey is another one. And so Casey Greer, also very high on the luminary, and this person is a luminary manager, and we'll pick up on that. So in direct sales, luminaries focus on the product. So what interests them is the features, the benefits, the research behind it. Was there any proof, testing, evidence? What difference does it make? So typically when they get into direct sales, they get into it because of the product itself. In the case of my wife's involvement in direct sales, she was involved in Creative Memories for over 20 years and had a group of about 2,000 people. And the luminaries in her team wanted to know the archival quality. Was it safe? Was it acid-free? And so that's what they wanted to know about the business. In your case, similar things. In terms of the entrepreneurs, which is our second group, they think that ideas are a dime a dozen, but really what is key is opportunities, and they'll make the most of whatever you give them. They tend to be short to medium-term thinkers, and they can create stuff out of nothing. What they care about is what. And so for them, it's not the why, but what are we going to do with this thing? In your group, Tiffany is an entrepreneur. In fact, she's an entrepreneur luminary, which is an interesting combination. And so in her case, it would be the primary thing that would drive her would be the business opportunity. So if you look at entrepreneurs, they create things out of nothing, pull resources together. They're typically good at selling stuff, and they can sell ice to an Eskimo quite often, and they overcome obstacles quite easily. In the direct sales world, they want to know how one makes money, how I can build a secondary income, how everything is going to, all sales is moving towards direct sales in their mind. They want to have their own business, not just a job, and they want residual income. So those are the kind of things that entrepreneurs care about. In reality, we're designed to be in a team with all 5 slices. And so each of us has a little bit of everything. And what you have to figure out is the people that you're dealing with, either in your group or in your customer base, how are they wired? You have to figure that out pretty quickly so that you can speak to them in their particular language. Now, managers love pretty much anything with a P: policies, procedures, processes, planning, that sort of stuff. Not so much people. But they believe that until you've got a proper plan, then nothing's really happened. And so they tend to be deliberate, and they can implement vision really, really well. And so these are people who care about how can we do this again and again on a predictable basis. So Catherine is a manager organizer, looks like it, and you have quite a few of those in your group. And so for her, it would be, is this business going to take up a lot of my time? Is it systematic? Tara is another one, also a manager organizer. And what you would see for them, they do detailed planning. They look at the end-to-end processes. They build teams well. They establish structures. They don't just do stuff randomly. And so they tend to focus on efficiency. And so in their particular case, when it comes to the direct sales business, they want to know, does this thing really, really work? Now, what's interesting about managers is that they think that they're the only sane ones in the group. The rest of us, they think, are just a little bit off center, and that if we'd, eaten our Wheaties and been more disciplined, we could have been managers if we wanted to. But the reality is is that we're just a little bit short of being managers. And in their view, they can't understand why everybody else isn't a manager. And so Sarah is another one over here, pretty strong manager organizer. So I've shown you 3 manager organizers. And the kind of things that they tend to focus on is how much time does this business take? Is it efficient? Is the company organized? If I organize something, will they ship it to me? Will they be charged correctly? Will my commissions be correct? How predictable are things? You know, is this business going to spill over into the rest of my life, or can I contain it? These are the type of things that managers think about. Same thing with your customers. If you're speaking to customers who are managers, they want to know, is this thing cost efficient? Is this cheaper than going to buy something at Target? Okay, does this really, really work? Can you give me proof? And I want to make sure I'm not just wasting my time and my money and just picking up some sort of fad. Okay, so organizers are the least understood. And there's more of them than anybody else, including in your group, which I'll show you in a moment. But they tend to be action-oriented, pretty fast, and they have an unconscious competence. They're run by intuition. They love to solve problems, and they also love to bring things to a close. So they hate undone tasks, and they like to finish things off. And they don't finish things off to the standard of a manager, but they get it done a lot quicker. And so they care about when. And for them, the quick answer is normally the best answer. So in your group over here, I happen to know Lynn Lee pretty well because she worked with me for a long time, and she's an organizer networker. And you have a couple of other organizers in your group, which I'll chat about in a moment. But for them, they're the people who actually get to things very, very quickly. I was working with Kaiser Permanente, the hospital down in Redwood City, and we did an assessment, and nearly every physician came back as an organizer. And the question is, which department were we working with? Which part of the hospital were we working with? Well, the answer you've probably figured out was ER, so it was the emergency room. And organizers are perfect for the ER because they thrive on problems and solving problems. And when they don't have a problem to solve, they normally create one. And because for them, they get their satisfaction out of putting out fires. And so they like to tick things off their list, like to get things done. They don't like to read manuals. Typically, they don't like meetings. And they don't like to waste their time thinking about strategy and so on. They typically are bad delegators. They don't delegate well because it's quicker for them to do it themselves than for other people to tell other people to do it. So in your case, Crystal over here is an organizer, and she's an organizer manager, which means that she would have some structures of a manager, but her bent would be, given the gap over here, her bent would be to doing stuff quickly herself. So organizers care about making people's lives better. They focus on solving problems and solving them quickly. They go after short-term goals. What you'll find in the direct sales world is there's a lot of organizers, networkers, and entrepreneurs. And why? Because they go after the carrots. When the company dangles out an incentive to go to Panama or to go here or go there, then they will go after that. They'll go after it with everything they've got. They're not going to step back and ask, well, how does this fit in with my life goals and my strategic objectives? They'll just go for the carrot quickly. And so they're often doing well in this business. So a couple of other things. Organizers are not necessarily organized. So you might think when I use the term organizer that these people are neat and tidy. If you Google organizer, you're going to find these, things that sort out your tools in the garage or sort out your junk in the house. But organizers aren't necessarily personally organized. They just have their own systems. They're intuitive. They're not the same systems of a manager. And I can tell the desk of an organizer because instead of having a day planner, they have post-it notes all over the place. And normally looks a little bit chaotic, actually. Networkers, on the other hand, they tend to be people-oriented. And they instinctively gather people together. And they have this philosophy that if we get enough smart people in the room, then a miracle happens. They don't have agendas for the meetings, but they just like to get people together. So they care about who. So luminaries, just as a recap, why, the entrepreneurs, what, and then the managers, how, the organizers is when, and these guys who. So Michelle Love is an extreme networker, and an appropriate last name for Michelle. And I don't know if she got that maiden name or by marriage, but I would keep it. If it's your maiden name, just tell your husband he's got to change his name, because it's a great name for a networker. Now, what do networkers do? They pull people together. They love to hang out with people, do life with them. And for them, they like to just get people together. I'll unpack them a little bit later. But networkers care about who else is in the business, who else bought into it, how real are the people, do they connect with each other? They have a fear of missing out, and so they sign up for events quickly. They're also open to new ideas. And when they get a new idea and they're excited about it, they share it with lots of people. So they're like the bees in the garden that cross-pollinate. And so they're super good normally at making people feel comfortable. Everybody feels like their best friend right away. And so these are the networkers. Now, we are actually living in a world that is increasingly networked, and you'll find in a moment that there are more women networkers than men, and that's good news. And this is particularly good news in the direct sales business. So just to give you a summary, this is what luminaries do. They think, they dream, they write. Not so often. They don't get to action that often. The entrepreneurs, they create products, companies. They don't think about what went wrong, because entrepreneurs don't have failures. They just have learning experiences, they call them. Managers plan, build organizations, do things on a systematic basis, less spontaneous. Organizers just keep busy and tackle issues, solve problems, and they seldom do strategy. The networkers pull people together, relate, do life, collect, weave, do all that kind of stuff. And so that's a summary over here. The key is that we lead from our identity. How we wired is how we lead. And we tend to attract people who are similar to us. So just to sum up over here on the cares, luminaries care about ideas. They ask the question why. Entrepreneurs, opportunities is what they care about. And they ask the question, what are we going to do? The managers care about processes, policies, procedures, profits, planning, those type of things. And can we do this again and again on a predictable basis? And so it's a how question. For the organizers, it's a when question. For the networkers, it's a who question. So that's a summary of what people care about. Now, it's important to note that when we look at the worldwide population of these 5 types, luminaries are about 11 to 15%, entrepreneurs sit at about 15%, managers at about 24, 25%. And so half of the world's population are organizers and networkers, the two combined, sort of 30 and 20%. The challenge is that with traditional thinking about leaders, those people are not actually leaders. And so they get ignored. And we tend to think, oh, those people are not actually leaders, they're just doers. And that's a huge issue. Some people even write off managers as not being leaders. They just implement what leaders tell them to do. But I'm claiming that all 5 types are actually leaders. All of these are leaders. And so if we look at your aggregate results as a group, so if we take every single answer that you have on those 75 questions and we just add them up, we aggregate them out, you as a group come out as a group to be organizer managers is what you come out as. And but when we look at the global slice, it's pretty similar. You've got organizers, managers, similar to the global results as well that we have for everybody. So I'm going to unpack the characteristics a little bit more. I'm actually going to skip the strengths over here, and I'm going to go on and talk about a few other things, just digging into a few topics on the organizers and networkers. But before I do that, take a look at this truth. On a good day, I live the positive attributes of my primary or my first slice. On a bad day, I live out the negative attributes of my secondary slice. So what I'm saying is that each person, take Felicia, she has all 5 slices. But let's just say she's primarily an organizer and then a networker. If that's the case, on a good day, she exhibits the strengths of an organizer backed up with the strengths of a networker. But on a bad day, she defaults to the negative characteristics of a networker. And so you can often figure out who you are by looking at your weaknesses. These are covered in more detail in the book itself. When I look at your group as a whole, everybody who answered the assessment, what this chart tells me is that there's over 40 people who are primarily organizers and over 20 who are primarily networkers. So the dark shading over here is the first slice, and the light shading is the second slice. So we've got another of over 40 who are first slice organizers, and their second slice, another 20 plus with their second slice. And then we've got over 20 whose first slice is networker. And you'll see that the others drop down significantly. So just a handful of luminaries and entrepreneurs, just over 10. So 4 times as many organizers as managers. And so this is the composition of the group. Now, let's dig into the organizers a bit more. What they're good at doing is seeing the practical implications of the vision that somebody has, and they can then take that and translate that into action items very, very quickly. And so in something like a direct sales organization where the products come from a corporate office, a lot of the marketing comes from a corporate office, an organizer is good at taking it and implementing it. A luminary will want to change it, tweak it, adjust it. But an organizer picks it up and runs with it. And they get to what I would call the critical 70% of the tasks very, very quickly. The interesting thing about organizers is that they don't go much beyond the 70%. For them, a quick answer is better than a 100% answer that takes forever. And so there's more to talk about with this, but they go for very quick solutions rather than perfect solutions. So these guys are seldom perfectionists. They don't read instructions on manuals. They don't look at all of the directions. They don't follow a recipe all the way down. Typically, they don't follow a recipe, but if they do force themselves to follow a recipe, they don't follow it all the way to the end. They read about 70% of it and then make up the rest. So they're intuitive, they're instinctive, they take ownership quickly. In your case over here, you have a couple of them. So Felicia is actually an organizer, networker, entrepreneur. And so this is why she likes my wife, who has the same profile, except my wife's manager is probably a lot lower. But so Felicia is the one, as they say, the organizer, networker, entrepreneur. And Mary, also on the call, is an organizer, manager. And so I have a number of folks who've been organizers who've worked with me over the years, and they're fabulous because they actually get going with things super quickly. In the case of Mary, she would have that, and she would have the ability to back up what she does with systems, with procedures, etc. But a bent would be still towards activity rather than building long-term structure. In Felicia's case, she would be interested in activity as well, and then pulling people in to help with that. So her activities would tend towards pulling people together. And so you can see the mode of communication of organizers. It tends to be pretty frantic, urgent, a lot of stuff that's done by text and less by email. And I know, having worked with Felicia, that that she does a lot of stuff while she's texting, while she's driving kids to school or here or there. And normally, you know, if she's dealing with somebody who's a manager or one of the other slices, they would prefer to actually do something on email. But for her, she'd rather just do it quickly and send 5 texts than 1 email. And so for those of you who work with Felicia, you've probably seen that that's what she does. It's no surprise. And but that's pretty typical for people who are organizers. Now, it's interesting for Mary, her network is pretty low. And so when she smiles at you and gives you a hug, she might be faking it. Actually, that's not true. It's not that people who are low on the networker score don't like other people, but networkers, people high on the networker score, make people feel like they're loved right away. So there are some weaknesses to organizers. They create issues where there aren't issues sometimes. Sometimes they won't lay down intuition, so they do a lot of stuff by instinct, but that means they also don't want to learn necessarily. And at a heart level, they can feel underappreciated, so that can be a problem. So here's another person, Christine Friedman. She's an organizer luminary, which is an unusual combination. So on a good day, she'll get to action very, very quickly. On a bad day, she'll pick up the negatives of a luminary and she'll think about stuff forever and never get to action. So when she's having a bad day, then Christine would be a bit paralyzed in terms of activity. But on a good day, she's going to fly through tasks very, very quickly. Okay, another truism over here. It says that prizing intuition above the disciplines of maturity can be fatal, and vice versa. So you've got to have both instinct or intuition and disciplines that come out of growing yourself as a leader. So Rosanna is another organizer, an organizer manager, similar to Mary. And so some of the strengths of networkers. Networkers understand people, and they're able to cross-connect and say, if I got this person together with that person, together with that person, then it's going to be awesome. And they are tireless in terms of contacting people. Everybody feels like their best friend. They have about 350 best friends, by the way. But I had a guy come to me. He actually worked at Microsoft, and he said to me, you know, I'm an organizer. I said, you're not an organizer. He said, but I have 2,000 Facebook friends. I said, you see those people over there at the coffee machine? Go and ask them if you're an organizer. And the people at the coffee machine were a group of networkers, rather, a group of networkers that were having a love fest. And so he goes and asks them, am I a networker? They all shake their heads. No. Networkers are an amazing group of people. They tend to be underappreciated in businesses because they think that they're just the schmoozy people. They name drop. They play golf with people. They hang out. They have coffee. They don't do, in the eyes of a manager, they don't do real work. But for them, the real work is the people stuff, and they do it better than anybody else. Some of their weaknesses, they're not so good at assessing reality. They don't like bad news. They don't like disciplining people, and they don't like to hear bad news or give bad news. And so they'll delay in sharing bad news. Now, you have tons of networkers over here, and I'll just put some of them up. And you can see from Chelsea, Angela, Shelley, Mindy, and so on, networker, something or other. And this is great because your business, the direct sales business, is actually what's also sometimes called a network marketing business. And so having a lot of networkers is fantastic. So when networkers get into the direct sales business, they get in for the people. And so in this particular business, that's what they care about, is who else is doing it and so on. So let's look at your overall results over here. When I look at your first slice over here, this is what our global results are, but in your case, this is what it looks like. So there's quite a difference between the global results over here, and in your case, 45% organizers, 31% networkers, and then the others trail significantly. So you've mostly got organizer networkers. Just wanted to point out the male-female split over here, just so that you can see that about... in the case of the females, there's about nearly 60% organizers and networkers. And this is true across countries. So I'm looking at the top 10 in each of these categories over here, moving along quite quickly. And so in terms of the luminaries, Casey, Kath, Brandy, Kimberly, Christine, these are the top luminaries, but the top two really are Casey and Kath. In terms of entrepreneurs, Joanne, TP and Sabrina, and it goes down from there. And then on the manager side, Julie Webb, Sarah, Tara Thomas, and yeah, so Julie Webb, you probably wonder why it says Webb Julie. I'm assuming that Julie is actually her first name, but probably somewhere she had to fill in her first name, last name first, and so on. So that's kind of fun. Okay, great. So those are our managers. Our organizers over here are Rosanna, Lynn Lee, Jennifer, Holly, and so on. And these are just the top 10. And then the networkers, Joanne Lott, Lynn Lee. And so Lynn Lee's secondary slice is networker, but it's still very, very high, as you can see over here. And I just thought I'd mention, special last mention to Laurie Tankersley. I don't know who you are, Laurie, but you're a Luminary manager. Welcome to the club. Okay, so just before I take some questions, most of you or some of you got a copy of the book. These things are covered in the book. You can get it from lemonleadership.com or just inst.net, that website over there. There's a publications page if you go there, inst.net/publications, or I believe Felicia has some and she can get it to you. So what could you do next? After you've read the book, you could sign up for a workshop, and I'm speaking with Felicia about doing a series of these with you potentially. One would be on communications, because each of the lemons communicates differently. Not only do they speak using different language, but they hear things differently. They verbalize things in different ways. And so you need to be able to figure out who your customers are so that you speak their language, and the same for people on your team. They have a different definition of work. And people in direct sales have a tendency to work in particular ways, but there's other things they need to do as well. How they build their team varies, both for people who are part of their team and customers. And then affirmation, rewards, recognition is different for each of the lemons. And so we'll talk about doing something along these lines. We also have another thing that we look at, which is Lemon for Lovers, and we look at what it looks like within families and relationships. And we've seen many, many actually marriages turned around and relationships turned around, parents and kids significantly. I just did a lemon assessment for a family with 8 kids, and significant tension in the family. Because the dad was a networker entrepreneur and the mom was an organizer. She had to do all the discipline, had to do all the work, and he was pretty easygoing. Kids loved him. Wasn't looking so good for her. And it was just coming out of how they were wired. And so the Lemon for Lovers thing can be very helpful. Great. So that's it from my side, Felicia. And I'm happy to take any questions. And I'm going to kill the slides now, and then so that I can see any questions that have popped up on the chat, or just hear any that have come from you. I'm going to pop the chat up over here. Good. Any questions? You can pop them in the chat, and Felicia I can read them as well, or Felicia, if you have any.
I was trying to get the questions on their Facebook group. So somebody is asking, manager and networker, they seem like opposites. Can you explain a little bit more?
Yeah. So the managers kind of see themselves as the plum center, and then they kind of have this belief that, if entrepreneurs and organizers had been a bit more disciplined, then they could have been managers. But luminaries and networkers, they're a lost cause. The luminaries are out in left field and the networkers are in la la land, So that's the view of the managers, right? So there is a bit of a tension between those two. However, you can be a manager luminary. Interesting to point out, you can be an extroverted manager and an introverted networker. So don't look at your style. I know people who are surprised that they're networkers. They love people, they love connecting with people, but in small groups. Whereas an extrovert networker will do it in larger chunks. Yeah, so a networker is very comfortable with ambiguity, a manager not. A networker doesn't have verbs in their sentence. A manager is pretty black and white and structured and more linear. And so, yeah, it's an interesting combination, but there are manager networkers and networker managers, fewer networker managers, but sometimes you get manager networkers, but often the manager combination will, you know, I mean, it's possible. They do look like opposites, but what's interesting is, let's just say you're a manager and you go to a show like a convention or a trade show. What you have to do is worker. Or if you're too lazy to do that, get a best buddy who's a networker and go with them. Because the best buddy, what I find when I go to a trade show, worker with me, I can go and sit on my butt, and in about half an hour, the networker has found everybody in the trade show that I should talk to, and they come back. It's awesome. Or if I don't do that, then I have to dial up my networker. Yeah. Just like it goes the other way. You know, if you're an organizer or a networker, a luminary, an entrepreneur, you can't become a manager. Speak like a manager. So you can fake being a manager. You can speak manager speak, and that makes the managers comfortable. So we can adapt to working with each other.
Thank you. My husband and I are a prime example of strong manager and a networker, which ran into some conflict last night, but we came to a resolution. So we'll tell that story another time. But I have a luminary entrepreneur asking, how does she get more of her networker in her to come out to put things into process?
So to get the networker out, so she's a luminary entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So build people into your to-do lists, right? So as a luminary, you can get the concept on something. As an entrepreneur, you can say, okay, I see the business opportunity and so on. So you might not gravitate to the people side just naturally, but what you can do is in your entrepreneur to-do lists, pull in there. Entrepreneurs are good at pulling resources together. This sounds a little bit crass, but people are a resource in a direct sales business. So think about it, like if you were a Silicon Valley startup, you would have to get funding to do your business. If you're doing a direct sales business, you have to get people who are part of the fuel for the fire. You'll do it not because you're all warm and fuzzy towards people, but because you need them to build the venture. And so you just build it into your plan. Yeah.
So that's great when you start a team, I suppose. But since in direct sales, we are a one-stop shop, we need to do everything ourselves pretty much. How would you practically suggest that we do that for the luminaries and entrepreneurs to strengthen their end?
Yeah, I think you have to, speak the language of networkers. If your customer is a networker or the people that you're recruiting are networkers, luminaries speak concepts. Managers speak more precisely around structures and organizations. Networkers tell stories, right? That's what they do. So stories are their stock in trade. That's what, it's about who and where, and they can make an ordinary story sound like an awesome story. That's what they do. And so, I started off at Price Waterhouse, and, it's a pretty boring accounting firm, as you know. And so when I shifted into consulting, I had to learn to tell stories because people remember stories. So as a luminary, you'd want to deal with the facts, the products, what percentage content of this is that and all this kind of stuff. And if you've got customers who are networkers, their eyes will glaze over. And so what you have to do is you have to tell a story. Oh, I had a customer and she had a kid who had an allergy and she did this and then the kid's life was changed. That's what a networker wants to hear. They don't want to hear the facts and the figures.
Right. I'm actually applying that when I'm talking to customers, hosts, and even Apostle Web recruits. Is I'm finding what their language is and try to respond in that way, because some people don't care. They can buy everything in the catalog, but if you give them the vision of Norwex, the luminary would just grab hold of it and just work because they believe in the mission and they have passion for it. So it's very interesting you brought that up. And you're right. For those who have health issues, who are trying to figure out things for solutions for their families, just talk about the stories, the products, and that's what they grab hold on. And then some other people are just asking about, they're pure managers. They say, well, how am I going to get training? What is this going to do for me? And so then you talk along those lines. So it's very telltaling what type of people you're talking with, and to adjust accordingly.
Yeah, a friend of mine says he throws out lemon bait, right? And then he sees what people jump on. It's like when you put fish food in your fish tank, right? Then what do they go after? And the managers go after the process and the plan and all that kind of stuff. The luminaries go after the concepts, but the networkers go after the people. And the organizers solving the problem. So you can who it is that you're talking to and adapt your language to the way they hear things and the way that they speak. So we can't change who we are, can't change our stripes, but we can change our speech.
Right.
Now, networkers adapt their speech easier than anybody else. They're communication chameleons. So that's why you do that, Felicia, because for you, it's kind of easy. Speaking the language of the person that you're speaking to. For the rest of us, we have to work harder at adapting our speech.
Right. So you mentioned that your wife, Lynn Johnson, has been with Creative Memories, another direct sales company, for over 2 decades. How did you see her implementing some of this Lemon leadership understanding to build her team and to build her business up?
Yeah, it was firstly understanding just some of the stuff I shared, that the 5 different types look for different things. So the luminaries go after the product features, functions, and so on. The managers, the entrepreneurs will go after the business model. Can I make money? Is this a good comp plan? Is there residual income? How many levels deep does it go, et cetera, et cetera. And so once you understand how somebody is wired, you know how to recruit them, what they're going to go after. Secondly, you know how to affirm them, because networkers like to be liked. So they like to be loved. So to say, oh, Felicia, we think that you're awesome, you're great, right? But that doesn't work for an entrepreneur. They like to be paid. So they're like, don't clap, throw money, So in your affirmation process, how you affirm them, a huge difference over there. And then also watching out, because we tend to recruit people who are the same as us. Mm-hmm. And you can see this in your group. Your profile and Mary's profile, I'm not quite sure how the rest of you hang together, but there's a large percentage of the people that have a similar profile. Mm-hmm. And part of that is industry, but that same thing happens in other industries as well. We hire people who are similar to us by instinct. And so what you have to do is, if you are building a team, you are a one-stop shop. But if you are building a team, or if you're getting advice and inputs, then make sure you're getting it from a mix of people, not just some people who are exactly the same as you.
Right, that's very wise, because you don't want to hear people speaking your same language. It's nice to hear from a different angle. Somebody who's long-term, and somebody who has systems, who thinks systems, and somebody who has more courage to try new things. So that's very true.
The other thing that Lynn did was she would allocate stuff out to people based on how they were wired. So if there was a new product out, she would give it to a luminary to look at it and to think about it, right? If there was a change in the comp plan, she'd throw it over the wall to the entrepreneurs and the managers, right? And if there was a new marketing spiel that came out, she'd give it to the networkers to look at. So when you look at how you share stuff across your team and you share ideas, painstakingly going through everything, because you've got a manager in your group, they come out with a new set of numbers. The manager can go through it in 10 minutes, and it's going to take you half an hour to do the same thing. So just let them do it.
Very true. So there's a lot more we can go on. I'm really excited to be offering the free tool workshops, so we can go deeper into Lemon leadership and to understand our DNA. And got a copy of this. We'll post a link where you can get a copy of this leadership. How we're going to run the workshop is just that you would read a couple of chapters and then we would go do the webinar styles. So we're going to do one on work, on communications, and also on build team through affirmations. So we'll have more details with that. So I just want to thank Brett so much for jumping on with her tonight. And if you have further questions, please post them either in the comments in our Facebook group, and then we'll ask Brett about that, or you can post it here. I'm not sure if you can, but please post it in our team Facebook group, and we'll get them answered for you. So thank you so much, Brett. We will be in touch.
Thank you. Nice to meet you all. Cheers. Bye for now.
All right. Bye-bye.